Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're here now and we're talking about abuse this morning in all its forms, our daily reality for many Nigerians. 6 out of 10 children experience some form of violence in their lifetime, and only a fraction ever receive help. Of the children who reported violence, fewer than 5 out of 100 received any form of support. Joining us now to speak on how we can all help reduce these statistics in our society is TAIWO Akinlami, a child abuse victim who transitioned from prey to predator of children. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show.
So we're going to start with the statistics. They're abysmal. It's scary. It's sad. All of us have witnessed children being violated physically in one form or the other. In our daily lives, on the street you're driving by, you see this. I want you to talk first of all about just the crisis that we're facing when it actually comes to violence against children.
Well, I think it's a major crisis. And I think to a very large extent, in 2016, in 2006, the United Nations released a report on violence against children. And the report says that never in the history of our world have children been exposed to the kind of violence they're exposed to today. And the report goes further to say that in the nooks and crannies of the world, abuse is rampant, but it's more rampant in developing countries of the world. And we come under developing countries of the world. And so the latest report on violence against children is 2014. That was a report by UNICEF, Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, and a couple of other organizations found that's where this report came from, that most of 6 out of 10 children, experience one form of abuse or the other. And the report also says that children experience this kind of abuses on multiple levels, which means a child may be exposed to physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. One child. And the children that are exposed to that are in higher percentage. So what now needs to happen? That report now goes further to say that it is high time we created national and local system that protects children. Because before now, the thinking was, how do you protect children? You react after something has happened. So in that report, the report promoted the idea that we need to begin to embrace preventive measures that can ensure that our children are not abused, instead of responding after the children have been abused.
I want to talk to you, I want to talk first about physical abuse. Last year, Veronica, I don't know if you had joined us then, when we had the video of the teacher that had beaten the student to basically a pulp. I mean, there was the skin, the video was very disturbing.
Yes.
And we saw that, and we saw that teacher was arrested and continued. But one of the conversations we started to have around that was actually corporal punishment. And where are we today after, that was to me, I always feel like there are these inciting incidents that give us an opportunity to talk about things and hopefully to learn from them. Has anything changed for the Nigerian child since, you remember the story last year, I'm sure. Has anything changed for the Nigerian child?
Well, I think the issue is this. We are a society that knows how to make noise when something happens. Where is the follow-up? What happens thereafter? Now, this is the major issue. In Lagos State, for example, in 2016, the Lagos State government promulgated an executive order and says that it is no more fashionable, it's now mandatory for organizations working with children, schools, churches, mosques, recreation centers, hospitals, everywhere children are gathered, to adopt a child protection system codified into a policy on which everybody working with children is trained. Because when you have a child protection policy in place, when you have a system in place, codified into a policy, the system foresees things that can happen, defines what care is. Care is to recognize the needs of children, to recognize the threat to them, to make adequate preparation according to global standard to meet these needs well before they arise. So why you find corporal punishment in school? For example, Lagos State government also has banned corporal punishment and says that the only person that can cane in the school is the head of school or head teacher, and anybody who thinks a child has done something that will require caning should report to the principal, and the head of school. The head of school will now decide whether the person should be caned or not. But the foundational thing is, how many schools in Lagos State where this executive order has been promulgated, I don't want to talk about states where we don't have such. How many schools in Lagos State have a child protection policy? How many public schools of the government that promulgated the executive order has child protection policy in their school? How many teachers are being trained, in child protection? Those are fundamental issues. When parents take their children, for example, there are 18,000 private schools in Lagos State, competing with 1,700 public schools, which means public education in Lagos is in the hand of the private sector. If it is in the hand of the private sector, which means they are dealing with customers. If they are dealing with customers, which means customers is always right. If customer is always right, which means customer can ask questions. If customer can ask questions, it means customer must be responded to when they ask questions. How many parents actually know what question to ask? When you take your child to a school, do you ask, the question parents normally ask, are my children safe? What do you expect the school to say? The school will say, your children are safe. But you are going to ask, what measures have you put in place to ensure that my children are safe? So when you talk about corporal punishment, you find a situation where I've not seen concrete effort in the area of enforcement. Let me give you an example. You go to a school in the suburb of Lagos, you find 160 children in a class, 160 children, 120. In a class that is supposed to be 45, 30, and a teacher is trying to respond to these children, and this teacher himself or herself, has never been trained on alternative form of discipline. Now the government has made a policy. There's no budget, there's no plan to train the teachers in alternative form of discipline. And these teachers, they believe deep down that the reason why they have become who they have become was because they were caned. These teachers also, they cane their own children at home. As a matter of fact, when they force them not to cane children in school, they just leave the children to themselves. And which means there's no level of discipline going on there. And when they leave the children to themselves, what happens? It is their own children at home that suffer. Because all the caning they cannot do in school, they go and do it to their children. So it's a major issue. If we have to be proactive in dealing with matters that has to do with children, the unfortunate thing is this: we are yet to recognize the fact that our children are either victims of our example or they are beneficiaries of our example. Whichever way we look at it, we are going to produce after our kind. Our children are going to be like us. So if we recognize all of this, when you beat children, there's a school now that has been asked to pay maybe 26 million or 27 million for blinding a child in the name of caning. Yes. Now people say there's a thin line between child discipline and abuse. I said there's no such thing. Abuse is abuse, discipline is discipline. Those who don't know the difference confuse both, and they make a mistake, and they make a shipwreck of the lives of children. An adult beats an adult, you call it assault. A child beats a child, you say the child is stubborn. An adult beats a child in the name of discipline, you call it discipline. How does that add up? It doesn't add up. So at the end of the day, what we need to understand is that if we really want to discipline children, there has to be rules, there has to be regulation, exemplified by the people who are making the rules. You that say do not steal, you rob the temple. If you are not living the life, if you are not an example to the children, you don't prepare your lesson notes, you don't come to class on time, you exhibit all kinds of things, you don't go early for meetings, and you are telling your children, why are they going late to school? All of these things are things that we are yet to begin to look at. And until we understand that a society that has no order cannot demand order for children. We're just dealing with the case of a senator who in public was beating a woman. We are dealing with a case of all kinds of cases. We are dealing with you are watching news with your children. And news is supposed to be sane. It's supposed to be sane. And you're with your children. Some guys are wearing, some powerful dresses, and they are marching into a place. And your son asks you, "Mommy, who is this?" You say, "They are lawmakers." Oh, lawmakers? What does that mean? They are honorable people. They are called honorable this, honorable that. Which chambers are they walking to? You say, "It's hallowed chambers." What is hallowed, mommy? Very sacred place, honorable place. Okay, your son is interested, becomes curious, begins to watch with you, and at a point, somebody just walks into the place with some bodyguards and carry the mace and begins to run. And your son is saying, "Mommy, mommy, what's going on?" Then you say, maybe it's a joke. Maybe it's drama. Are you getting it? So in a society that has no respect for order, how do you begin to demand order and respect and dignity and honor to children when we do not exemplify it?
You've made a great, this is, I'm taking it all in. My blood pressure has gone up.
She's like, I have some more questions for these schools.
when we look at our culture as a whole,
Yes.
everything you said is great. Yes, there is laws that go out. A lot of times they're not implemented in the school, but the structure and the culture starts at home.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, even if things are being passed on by our government, the home structure is where it lies.
I agree
Our
with you completely.
culture does not really see the difference between violence, abuse to children, like you've rightfully said. Some people feel like that is the way to properly, spare the rod and spoil the child. That is the lifestyle that we are accustomed to in our generation and older generation. How do we begin to shift the mind frame?
It's something we have to shift. You know, because you see, people tell me that the children that are raised abroad, they are spoiled. I say, wow, how do you mean? They said they are unruly. I said, okay, those who are trained abroad, they have not started throwing chairs. They have not started stealing money that are meant for the public. You just become rich because you are a public officer. So they were not caned. They were spoken to. They were reasoned with. They were made to understand that a human being is a reasoning being that can reason. A child begins to speak, begins to reason when the child is born, because a human being is a reasoning being, and different from a being of instinct, an animal. So when you begin to talk to children, when you begin to have conversations with them, you know that they listen. The challenge is we mistake what children understand for what they hear. Children hear. What they understand is different. It is what they hear regularly that activates what they understand. That is why I speak my dialect fluently. I've been in Lagos for 20-something years, over 20-something years. Then I hardly go to my hometown. But my mother tongue sticks with me. If you are looking at the way I'm speaking English now, you'll be perceiving my own intonation, which is my own local dialect. Now, that's how powerful dialect is. This is something I never paid to learn. I never went to school to learn Ondo dialect, but I speak it. If I see anybody who speaks now, I just keep speaking. When did I learn it? Subconsciously. When I was not aware I was learning anything. And that's how powerful these things are. Yes. At the end of the day, we that we are being caned, the people that are not caned, they created wristwatch, we use it. They created TV station, we come into it. They created glasses, we wear it. They created everything, we wear it. We that we have been caned, we don't create anything. We pride ourselves in the ability to use the things that the caned people, the people that are not caned, they create. And that has become our history. We are the world's largest liability as a continent, and we are yet to think, because our pride is I fly business class, I use this phone, I use that phone, and all of that. So the fundamental thing for me, therefore, is that we need to review who we are and the things that we believe.
All right, Taiwo, you know what? We're going to take a quick break and come back. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We're still talking to TAIWO Akínlámi, a child abuse victim, but also a child protector. And he's been telling us really about some of the challenges we face in Nigeria.
Well, I just have to clarify at this point, corporal punishment was not banned in the UK until the 80s, I believe 1986, and that was for state schools. Private schools took even longer. In the 70s, there was a huge protest. Two parents, actually, started the movement. They used to cane children in British schools, even in the 70s. So just a correction there.
Well, you know, societies differ. You have to respond according to your history.
No, but you said that we use all of their things in the West and they don't cane. Yes, they do. But actually, my question for you is...
So, madam, I think the point is this. Caning is not a thing. It is abuse. It is dehumanization in the name of discipline.
You said
it is to blind children. No, I'm not for caning. I'm not against caning. I'm for method. I'm for how these things are done. That's what I'm for. At the end of the day, it is whether we want to dehumanize our children in the name of caning or discipline, or we want to help them. Because what is discipline? The word discipline comes from the Latin word disciplinare, which is to teach, not to beat. And if you are going to teach, you are going to teach by example. That's why
yes, but your point about how their society is so much more advanced and they don't have corporal punishment wasn't accurate.
I didn't say that.
So
I didn't say that. What I was saying, no, what I was saying is that, you see, when I use the word cane, here, I'm referring to dehumanization. Are you getting? There are people still spank their children in developed countries. I'm aware of that. But what I'm saying is that whether it's illegal or it's illegal, whether they take them inside somewhere, and there are some people in those societies who still believe that they have to cane children. But you see, they don't do it bragging. They don't come to the public and do it, and nothing happens. That's the difference.
It's important to make that clarification.
Okay.
But there was, I mean, yes,
I wanted to ask you about your background.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your background and how you came to this point of being an advocate for children's rights?
My background is tough. I don't look like childhood. I don't look back to childhood with nostalgia, because there's nothing that I left in childhood I want to go and take. Childhood was tough for me, and I say that with all kinds of soberness, with every candor inside of me. So you say there was nothing good about your childhood. I think there's some things good, but this is the point. If you write an exam and you scored 70%, you are called an excellent student, but you still lost 30 marks. But what you lost superimposes itself on what you got, because what you lost is infinitesimal, so you are called an excellent person. If you do an exam and you get 30 marks, you are still told to repeat the class. Not because you didn't get something, but what you got is so insignificant to what you lost, to the point that what you lost superimposes itself on what you got. So that what happened to me. There must be spark of experiences in childhood that were pleasant. I can't remember them, but I know that I never experienced innocence as a child. If childhood was synonymous with innocence, TAIWO AKINLAMI, I never knew innocence. I lost my virginity at the age of 6. That's the year I started primary school. Because my mother would go to the market, leave me with a woman who was her neighbor. And this woman would strip me naked, do with a 6-year-old boy what a woman should do with a man. And before I knew it, and that happened between age 6 and 8 consistently. And before I knew it, my sexuality was awoken. As a child, I started having sexual relationships with other children. As a teenager, I've started having anal sex. To this parents, we call it homosexuality.
Sorry, I want to go back to your mom leaving you with her neighbor.
Yeah.
Was that sort of a babysitting relationship? And did you ever tell your mom what was happening?
No, it wasn't a babysitting relationship. It's that when we returned from school, we stayed with a neighbor.
Okay.
Because I think she was a young school leaver who was around, maybe looking for a job.
So she was looking after you.
So she was just looking after us for free. Okay. But we paid dearly for it.
Which is kind of the case in many homes.
Yes, the case in many homes that you just keep your children, because you think that a nanny is a neighbor. A nanny is not a neighbor. The only place you find closeness between a neighbor and a nanny is in the dictionary, because they start with, both words start with N. A neighbor, that somebody is your neighbor. Now, who is a pedophile? We have the description. Average age man or woman who has his or her own children, who has a job, who is working. So those who are pedophiles don't put it on their foreheads that they are pedophiles. And those who want to sexually molest children don't carry placard that they want to sexually molest them. It is the responsibility of those who want to protect children to understand all of this. I've studied this thing for a while, and I've understood the psychology of the child abuser, particularly sexual abuser. The first thing the child sexual abuser does is to profile the child. Look at the child who is always alone. Look at the child who is timid. Look at the child who will never speak up. Look at the child who is withdrawn. Then after the pedophile or the abuser has profiled the child, the next thing the abuser does is to do what? Is to begin to groom the child. Now, what does it mean to groom? To get the child comfortable with the whole idea of abuse, and to get the child comfortable with the abuser. And begins to make statements to the child like, you are my wife, you are my husband, and begin to play with the mind of the child. And after the pedophile or the abuser has groomed the child, the next thing the abuser does is to attack. And after attacking the child, the abuser comes back to manipulate. Manipulation is 2 ways. I really love you. I care about you. I will take care of you. This is secret between us. Whatever husband and wife do, they do in secret. You are my wife, I'm your husband. You have always been my wife. And so the child believes. And if the child does not accept that, threat comes in, I will kill you. You better not tell anybody. If you tell anybody, I will kill you, I'll kill your father, I'll kill your mother, I'll kill everybody. So now, when the child is not properly trained, like I was not trained, my father died at the age of 82, I was 39 years old in 2009. My father never had a conversation with me. We never sat down to have any conversation. My mother also died that same year. We never had a conversation. So the problem was, I was saved in the hands of the prey, of the predator. I was saved as a prey in the hands of the predator, because I was that kind of child that has been profiled, that has been groomed, that has been manipulated, that has been attacked and manipulated. My father died at the age of 82. I was 39 years old. He never heard my story. My mother died that same year at the age of 67. She never heard my story. I was just, and this lady would call me husband, all of that before my parents, and my parents would just laugh over it. And I couldn't, they never told me about my sexuality. They never told me about what I need to understand about sex and all of that. Those were conversations that we never had. They just expected that I would just understand it and do the needful, you know. And
did you tell anyone about the abuse?
Well, there was nobody to talk to. There was nobody to talk to. I couldn't speak with my mom. I couldn't speak with my dad. We didn't have that relationship. You know, my father would return from work and he would change it to his casuals. My mother returned very late from the market. But my father sometimes came in earlier than my mother. And my father would change it to his casuals, then he'll go and be with the boys, they'll be drinking. Many days he'll be drunk, he won't be able to find his way home. So this have to come and call us to come and bring him home. As a teenager, I will stand by the door and say, Daddy, you cannot go out today. He's gone out to drink, he's come back to take some money to go and drink more. And I will stand at the door and say, you cannot go anymore. So that was the kind of home I was raised in.
Yes.
So I was just that kind of child that was available for anything available.
Yes,
How did you find your way out of that into advocacy for other children?
Okay. So sexual abuse was one. When my father wanted to claim me, he would tie my hands, he would tie my legs, he would strip me naked. You give me 6 strokes of the cane, that he would go and sit down, and that could go on for half a day. And we lived in face-to-face apartment where everybody minded their business except gossip. So I was just beaten, and the things that I saw tied growing up were goats, were chickens. So I drew my personality from those things that were tied. If goats were tied and I was tied, I think we should be the same thing. That was the way my mind was.
Feral.
Yes.
Yes, that was the way I was thinking then. Emotional abuse, you know, psychology says for every wrong word you say to a child, you need 17 to correct it. I had wrong word all my life. Bastard, stupid boy, Abira, do you know that is when I gave birth to you, I counted my loss. The pain I went through giving birth to you was a loss. You are a useless child. And I heard all of those things growing up. Then, what about neglect? There are 3 ways you can neglect a child. The first kind of neglect is that you are not there. And that's what is happening today. Now, the second kind of neglect is that you are there, but you don't know what to do. You don't know what, you can't help your children. You are there. They are going to sign menstrual cycle. You have never discussed it with them. You don't even know what is happening. That's what happened to Ukaya Tolukbo, who told her story at a program organized by Action Aid Incorporated. When she turned 13 or 14, she started seeing her period. Then she approached her mom. Mom, I saw blood. What's going on? Mom says, go to that supermarket there, buy sanitary towel. The direction how to use it is there. Just use it, and when I come back, we'll have a conversation. Then truly, the child went to get that sanitary towel, came back, and when the parents returned in the evening, she was thinking that it was a major issue that they were going to discuss. Nobody discussed it. And she tried to raise it during dinner, and they just brush it aside. Then she decided, I'm not going to discuss this matter with my parents anymore. What did she do? She went out there and started talking to her friends. And her friends said, okay, you see your menstrual cycle, then you are ready for sex. And that's how she got in. Treated all kinds of venereal diseases before Action Aid Incorporated organized a program. That's how she told her story. Now, that is neglect. That is neglect. Now, so you don't know what to do. The third kind of neglect is that you are there, but you are not there. You are still there, but you are carried away. Are you getting it? So, in 1997, so when I became an adult, I was a shadow of myself. Masturbation, anything on that scale, drinking, and all of those things. But in 1997, I gave my life to Christ. I became a Christian. And that was the turning point in my life. I began to understand that the way my parents treated me was not necessarily my identity. My father did not understand who he was. So he couldn't give me an identity after the nature of God. And he too I have nothing against my dad till he died. I took care of him with my siblings and my mom also. Have nothing against them. They were also products of their own childhood. So they gave what they could, and the best they could do, that's what they did. Because they thought they were looking for the best for me. Actually, they were destroying me. Wow. I was not actually raised.
We're going to come back and pick up on this. We really want to hear this part of your story when we come back from the break. Welcome back. We're still in studio with TAIWO Akínlámi, a child protector, but also a victim of abuse when he was young. You were telling us really about how you became an advocate, and you were very specific about how things changed for you in 1997.
1997, February 16, precisely, I gave my life to Christ. And in my room in the university, That was my last year in the university, so I gave my life to Christ. And what I taught, I met a man. His name is Olakunle Shoriyan. He introduced me to the Fountain of Light Church where I worship today. And when I got there, I met wonderful people. I stayed in church. I was expecting that something was just going to click and something was just going to change. But the more I attended, the more it appeared, though the messages were powerful, though there were helps here and there, but the more I listened, the more it appeared that I was sinking deeper into the abyss of mess. And so I would think about all kinds of things. My mind was not dirty, my mind was dead. You know, I could, you see, to the pure things are pure, but to me, everything was perverted. Somebody was nice to me, ideas run through my head. You know, somebody is going up to sing in the choir. My mind was just too messed up. So one day I went to meet Olakunle Shoriyan, and I told him I was not coming to that church again because I felt it wasn't helping me. So he told me something. I said, cut to the man that because you're the one who introduced me to this place, I just let you know I wasn't coming again. So he told me that, well, don't think you are just going to be transformed by virtue of coming. You have to become your own therapist. You have to become a warmonger. You have to study the word for yourself and begin to see yourself in the light of the word. So I took that as a challenge, started doing that regularly. Little by little, my life began to change in my very eyes, one day at a time. So I got married at the age of 36 by the grace of God. I abstained from that I've become anything under skirt. But at that time, my life was in a big mess, masturbation. Every prostitute joint in Lagos, I knew it. Every city I traveled to, the first place I went to was a prostitute joint. My life was just messed up, big messed up. And I told you that as a teenager, I've already sexually molested my father's neighbor's daughter. So
no, you didn't tell us that.
As a teenager, I've done that. You know, I've warned her not to tell anybody. So my life has moved full circle. Yes. I've been an abused person who became an abuser, and I've been a protector for 22 years. So for 9 years, after I started working on myself, I abstained from sex completely. I've been married for 13 years by the grace of God, no scandal, not one, by the grace of God. So now, what now happened is that Chief Ganifami was my uncle.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry. For someone who was introduced to sex so early, and then someone that also perpetrated sex acts in the way you did, how did you transition from understanding what sex meant and what it's used for, and how were you able to transition from sex being this really? I mean, the beginning, your introductions to sex was quite violent.
This is the point for me. I've never tried to stop any habit. What I've come to understand is that what you see regularly, when I work with young people who are dealing with masturbation, dealing with pornography and all of that, I try to exchange what they see, you know, because that is where it starts from, the content of it. So what you see regularly or what you hear regularly is going to determine what you think. What you think will determine what you believe. What you believe cannot be seen as your value system. It shows in your habit. Your habit determines your relationships. Your relationship determines your opportunities. Your opportunity determines your reward. Your reward determines your significance in life. So it begins from what you see regularly. The first thing I did was to change my environment. I moved away from friends that we were involved in things together. And the next thing I began to do is to begin to look at the content of my mind. And, you know, then I began to understand that if only I can be consistent in changing the quality of my mind. At the time, I was on my laptop like 10 years ago. I was on my laptop and something popped up. I clicked it and it was pornography. So what did I do? I shut it down. It kept coming up. I took my entire laptop to Computer Village. I said, help me format it. I don't even want to take anything from there. Whether it is backed up or it's not, help me. See no evil, hear no evil. I don't want to go back to that life anymore. So for me, so how did I become an advocate? So when I graduated from the law school, Chief Ganifami was my uncle. As a matter of fact, he was the one who sent me to school because when I finished secondary school, my father could not continue. So he took over from there. The thinking was that when I finished, I was going to take up a job in his law firm, and it was the biggest law firm in Africa at that time. And so I looked straight into the eye of the family and I said I wasn't going to work with Chief Ganifami. Why? Because I found some truth. I found that my parents were not wicked. They were not wicked people. They were not ungodly people. They were not people who just brought children and didn't want to do anything. They lack three things. They lack knowledge. Knowledge is what to do with children. They lack skill. Skill is how to do it. They lack attitude. Attitude is the fortitude to do that which you know you should do. So I understood all of that. I said I was going to be a street advocate. I was going to be out there sharing my story to help parents and to help people who must have experienced, who might have experienced the kind of things I've experienced, to let them know that change is an ever-present possibility for any human being ready to take responsibility. You cannot continue to say, because I was abused, I became an abuser. Now, yes, you may say that initially, but it cannot continue to be your life that I can't help myself.
But
if
I
not,
want to talk to you about the help and support that's available or not available.
Yes.
Because, you know, we cited these appalling statistics earlier. You were able to renew your own mind, to use the Bible parlance. What tools can you teach other people in doing that? And what sort of formal or more medical help, if we're thinking about psychology and counseling, is available for people?
Okay. The first thing we need to say is that nobody can be helped who is not ready to be helped. That's number one thing. Now, I'm talking about adults now. For children, we have to first, you see, this same report, the report on violence against children, says children don't report abuse. Why is it that they don't report abuse? Because they believe they will not be believed. So many of the children that are abused don't look for help because they just believe that nobody is going to believe them. We first need to change this culture of silence that makes people, trauma begins from where you know that this thing has happened to me and is shut inside of me, and the abuser continues to threaten you, make life difficult for you, and begins to, maybe takes a picture of the whole experience, begins to send it to you, and you are shut down inside of you, you are not able to speak up. That is the real thing that eats people up. So we have to first begin to talk about the fact that if my wristwatch is stolen, I am not ashamed to come out to say my wristwatch is stolen. If my glasses is stolen, I'm not ashamed to come out to say my glasses is stolen. If somebody drives away my car, I'm not ashamed to come out to say that my car is stolen. Now, but when my virginity is stolen, when my dignity and honor is stolen, when something that is private for me, to me, that I should only release to those who I wish, and as a child, I don't even have capacity to release it because a child cannot give consent. A child is anybody below 18 years old, and the age of consent in Nigeria is still 18 years. It is, you know, except you are looking at violence against persons law, which is only operational in Abuja. But under the Child Rights Act,
Which is only in 15 states. Federal law?
24 states of the Federation. But the the violence against persons law is also needs to be domesticated. The same way the criminal law, you know, you have the criminal code of the Federation. It has to be domesticated in a state. You have the penal code of the Federation. It needs to be. These are federal laws that are domesticated in states. So the same way
the statutory rape 11 years old, which is why there's a huge movement now, because a lot of cultural considerations come in. People want to sleep with children. People want
Abuja.
to marry children.
Yes.
Yeah, so that they have created an environment in Nigeria where it's legal to do so.
No, in Abuja.
I wish it was 18.
Okay,
it
madam.
will be one day.
Okay,
but
madam.
now it's
But can I say, in Abuja, under the Violence Against Persons Act, all of those things have been tampered with. But you see, when you look at the Child Rights Act, and you know, there's a provision in the Child Rights Act that says any other law that is inconsistent with the provisions of the Child Rights Act is inconsistent to the extent of that inconsistency. So the primary law today in Nigeria when it comes to rights of children is the Child Rights Act, which has been domesticated in 24 states of the Federation. The states that are yet to domesticate are the core northern states, the northeastern states, you know, they are yet to domesticate. So for all of those states, we still have this major problem. But the point I'm trying to make is we must break this culture of I must speak out. You know, why the children refuse to speak out? We need to look at two things. One, the report says they will not be believed. They'll begin to query them, question them. I was sexually molested at the age of 6 to 8. I did not begin to speak at 27 until I was 27. Does that invalidate my story? Does that now mean I was not abused? Is it not the time that I found courage and found help that I came out to speak? So you don't determine for me where I speak. I speak when because it's not headache that you give me take two Panadol, two tablets of Panadol and you'll be fine. This is emotional wound right inside. So we need to address that. We need to, then when people speak up, what happens next? Because when I speak up, are there support systems that can help me?
So I want to go back to the 6-year-old youth because I think that those are the people that we need to actually make sure that people understand. I think the biggest challenge is communication between parents and children. So when you say children don't believe, children know they won't be believed. But we are not even giving. How do we give kids the tools to be able to actually verbalize what's happening to them? How do we give them, how do we change our language so that parents are asking the right questions and children are able to answer?
Excuse me, before you even, I even want to say this, not even just with parents and children, because in a house where you have siblings, you know, a sibling, you might not be able to talk to a parent, but how do we also integrate that in with sibling and family or cousins? Or,
how do we change the dynamic of support?
So it's said that communication is the blood of every relationship. So parents have to talk to their children. You know, parents try to understand all the evils that are out there, and I keep telling parents, you don't need to understand everything that is out there. You have a reporter in your children. If you draw them close, you have a relationship with them. The challenge is that there's entitlement mentality among parents. What is this entitlement mentality? The fact that I'm your father, I'm your mother, then we should have a relationship, you talk to me. This same thing that your daughter or your son is not telling you, is telling some people outside. That is the reason why they have a disagreement. So the fundamental thing, therefore, is that we need to, now, again, we have to look at the issue of time. Quality time, quantity time. These are major issues. Then you have to look at that vis-a-vis the economy. You know, parents here are responsible for everything. They run their family as if they are running a local government. We have to be interested in, you see, there's no nation on earth where parents are single-handedly responsible for raising their children. Now when you go to, when you understand that there are 4 rings of protection that are supposed to protect children. The first ring is the family. The second ring is the community. In the community, we have the media. Like this program now is educating parents. Then you have the church, you have the mosque, you have the schools. That's in the community. Then you have the state, that is the government that is supposed to make laws and all of that. Then you have the international community, which does not help you except they have their own interest. So when you understand all of this now, the international community, the state and the community, they are supposed to empower the parents so that the parents can play their role. For example, take away school fees from the burden of parents in Nigeria, you will see that there will be a level of relief, because when in Lagos State, for example, 18,000 private schools competing 1,700 public schools, so you find out that parents are going through a lot. Let me give you an example in Iceland. In Iceland, they found that children were messing up. Children were recalcitrant. They were not listening to their parents. They were involved in all kinds of vices. And what did they do? The first thing they did was to say, okay, why are our children behaving this way? You know what they found? Research found that the children who behaved that way were children that the parents had lesser time with. What did the government do? The government started a program to say, okay, spend 1 more hour with your children, we pay you so amount. Spend 2 more hours with your children, we pay you so amount. In 5 years, that tide changed, because we have to understand all of this. You know, parents in Nigeria, I must tell you with most profound respect, are under a lot of siege. That does not mean they should go away from their responsibility, but we need to understand that. But despite all of that, we beg parents, be close to your children. When your children, your child has been going to a school.
TAIWO, so we don't have that much time. I want to quickly discuss with you, very briefly, at what point would you advise parents to involve the law? If your child does report to you, what's the next step that you ought to take?
Well, you know, it's not every form of abuse that is criminal in nature. So if somebody yells at your child, you know, it's not criminal in nature. It can be civil. But when somebody sexually molests your child, when somebody beats your child and all of those things, when somebody beats your child, it's either civil, it can be both civil and criminal. But when somebody sexually molests your child, it's utterly criminal. And I don't think it's something that should be swept under the carpet. When that comes to the fore, the person cannot be begging. It is what has caused problem for us in this country, where a country, we just believe that you can break the law, you can do anything. Once you beg, I'm sorry. Everybody, now people should be ready for the consequences of their action. We're not in animal kingdom. In animal kingdom, they live by instinct. They can continue to beg. But in human kingdom, we must live by reasoning. And so that is why we need to.
Well, on that note, we're going to say thank you. And people can contact you on social media.
Yes, my Instagram handle is at TAIWO AKINLAMI. That's also my Twitter handle, and I'm TAIWO AKINLAMI on Facebook also.
Well, thank you for sharing your story and for doing the work you do.
Thank you.
It's time now for a short break. We'll have more conversations on protecting victims of abuse after the break.